Recognizes the Honourable the member for Stephenville Port-au-Port.
Chair, and it's always a pleasure to rise and speak here in this great House. Tonight we're speaking about Bill 32. That somewhere got lost, I think, through a number of speakers throughout the evening. But Bill 32 is an act to amend the Loan Act, and I'd like to read exactly what Bill 32 is about for the record, so we can try and put some things back in context here. Specifically with reference to some of the comments from the member from St. John's Centre. So the explanatory note here on the bill, and all of the members on our side as well as members opposite would certainly have this bill in front of them this evening. This bill would authorize the Lieutenant Governor and Council to increase the amount of money raised under the Loan Act from a maximum of $1.6 billion to a maximum of $3.4 billion. We're going to increase the maximum amount that we'll borrow from $1.6 billion to $3.4 billion. Now, it's important to note exactly those figures. Now, billions of dollars, certainly not something easy to grasp when you're talking that high figure, but it's important to note that because we're here this evening talking about many of the things we've done and we could have done or we should have done and what the members opposite would have done different. I haven't heard any suggestions this evening at all, in fact, as to what the members opposite would have done differently. But this is the highest amount of money our province has ever requested to borrow. In the history of our province, this is the highest amount of money we have ever requested to borrow. Okay? And so for the member for St. John's Centre to get up and compare us now borrowing $3.4 billion this year to compare us to Alberta, it is apples and oranges, Mr. Chair. It's apples and oranges. The province of Alberta this year has revenue, the estimated revenue that they'll generate this year in the province of Alberta is $41.14 billion. That's their expected revenue that Alberta is going to generate. The province of Alberta, by the way, for the member for St. John's Centre, has over 4.2 million souls, and we're here with less than 500,000, okay? Or just over 500,000 people. So it's completely apples and oranges to talk about the Alberta budget and the measures they've taken. And by the way, as well, over the next 3 years, the government of Alberta is anticipating $28.9 billion in deficit over the next 3 years. $28.9 billion in deficit. So for a province with 4 million people and revenue of $41 billion, absolutely, they have every ability to go into deficit to that magnitude based on the revenue they're expected to generate. Unfortunately, we're not in that position here. We're not in that position here in this province. Newfoundland and Labrador are starting from two completely different places. There's no doubt. We have no ability to be in any position that the province of Alberta is in. I'm tired of hearing about the province of Alberta's budget and the Notley budget and everything that the NDP has done in Alberta. It is apples and oranges when you're talking about 525,000 people in the province of Newfoundland, over 4 million there, and revenue gaps to $30-odd billion. It's insurmountable to even think about. Now, there's a few things I wanted to talk about this evening, but the members opposite have got me on a completely different track. We're here talking about the amount of money we're going to borrow and the tough decisions we've made. Looking back into some of the records, it was interesting to go back and research and see what some of the members opposite said, in particular with respect to their budget of 2015. And so I'm going to read just a few quotes, and I'll flick through them quickly. I know I only have a few minutes here, 4 or 5 minutes to speak this evening. And so the member from Mount Pearl North, Minister of Health and Community Services and the Deputy Premier at the time, and on the record, this is early January, I guess, as they were going into a budget process. And the member from Mount Pearl North said, and I quote, "We are going into a budget process that is clearly a tough budget process, given the financial situation that we face." Sounds like something we're saying right about now. "That is going to require tough decisions. It means we're going to have to make tough decisions." Okay, clearly, he said, we'll go further, clearly we are going to have to do things differently. Our level of spending around health care in this province is not sustainable. 40 cents of every dollar is being spent on the delivery of health care services in Newfoundland and Labrador. This is the member of Mount Pearl North last year in January. I'll fast forward for the member, and I'm only fast forwarding and I'll fast forwarding to further comments. But I'm only reminding them, as this is some of the same statements that we're making here now. So it's one thing to get up last year during your budget process and make some of these comments, and then to get up and claim that we're going to bring the economy to a halt. We're not on any track of mine or any different thinking than you were last year. However, we've chose to stand by our decisions, and we've chose not to accept to accept the difficult choices that we've had to make. Let me see here. Here we go. May 5th, so this is just over a year ago last year. Member from Mount Pearl North. The Leader of the Opposition, referring to us at the time, refers to what we are doing as cuts. And I'm obviously not surprised to hear him categorize it in that way. But what we are doing is finding efficiencies. We are streamlining services. There is an opportunity to do things better. There's an opportunity to do things more efficiently. That was in May 5th of last year. Here we go, May 20th. This is a great one. The Liberal idea seems to be, let's avoid tough choices. Let's make the popular choices. Let's say whatever we think the public wants to hear. Let's borrow, let's borrow, let's borrow. So true. I'll come back to that because the Liberal government certainly took every opportunity to make the tough choices. But there's some more interesting ones from the member of the member of Topsail Paradise, rather. The member for Topsail Paradise. I would say if we lined up at the door of the House of Assembly or in government today down over the steps of Confederation Building, because it is a long line, we had a big line of people who received funding from our government. And we said, come in now and tell us what you think about reducing our budget. Every one of them, I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, will have a reason why, yes, you should reduce the budget, but do not touch me, do not reduce mine, and here is why you should not reduce mine. That's the former Premier speaking last year with respect to their budget. Mr. Speaker, and this is another for the official Leader of the Opposition, last year in June. Mr. Speaker, there are three options. You reduce services, you increase borrowing, or you increase your revenue. What we sought out was balanced choices. Now, that's just a few quotes to put into context what the members opposite were stating this time last year, but are now over there boldly stating that we're over here with some new rhetoric. New rhetoric, and we cannot stand, and the Liberal idea was not to make tough choices, and the Liberal government was only going to make popular choices. Well, we've made a lot of very unpopular choices, and I believe that our government is on the record as simply stating, oh, laugh right now, laugh right now. Were you laughing in 2007 and 2008 and 2010, and the member for Fairland was present and opposite at the time, and so was the members of Cape St. Francis. Were you laughing then when you decreased taxes to the highest earners in our province year over year over year and decreased the HST at the same time? And for that matter, the same insurance tax that you're referring to now, Mr. Chair, the same insurance tax that you're over there referring to now, that we now have 15%, you took it away in 2008. You took it away. You took it away at the same time you decreased the taxes to the highest earners in the province, and now you're over here saying that we're going to grind the economy to a halt. Well, if you had some vision and you looked at a sustainable plan, we wouldn't be here right now, and we might be able to look at the member for St. John's Centre lovely plan of taking on an Alberta fantasy of going into deficit. We cannot go any further into debt than we are today. We cannot do it. We simply cannot. We're spending more on debt servicing than we are on education, and that's something that's unacceptable right now. And you talk about unpopular decisions. Well, I'll tell you one thing. The Minister of Transportation and Works put it best there about a week ago. He put it best when he said, you know what? He said, we certainly made some unpopular decisions, but this is not a popularity contest. And he is exactly right. This is not. This is not about popularity. It's not about fame. It's about protecting our future. And right now, we've had to make some very, very difficult choices, all of which we're aware, none of which are lost on me or my colleagues here in the House of Assembly. But for you guys to get over there with the nerve to get up and say the things you've been saying, when I've just read right into the record, I can table the document if you'd like, right into the record, Everything that you said last year when you defended your budget
Order, please.
is unacceptable.
Order, please.
Absolutely unacceptable. Thank you very much for your time.
Order, please.